Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Sitting on the roof for a while longer, Shiro waited until Nantion, Keiko, and Kiyomi left the hotel. How was the talk? Nimue called out while holding Addie in her arms. Are you okay, Shiro? Izul asked with worry. Yeah, I'm fine. Shiro smiled and nodded her head. You don't seem so fine. Nimue raised her eyebrows while sitting down. You don't want to leave, do you? She asked. Nope. But life is not always fair. Staying with the party would mean I'm sacrificing something else. An example would be Yuki's life. It's fine though. Good times must come to an end, so I'm prepared. Shiro replied. No, you're not. While I have not been with you for a long time, your facade cracks a little when it's about something you cherish. Nimue sighed and wrapped her arm around Shiro. Copying her movements, Izul did the same, but on the other side. Suddenly hugged by her two spirit companions, Shiro paused for a moment before nodding with a smile. While she needed to leave the party for their safety, at least she still had two people to keep her company. Taking a moment to enjoy the hug, Shiro calmed her emotions down. Thanks, you too. She chuckled. You're welcome. So what's the plan now? You said that you'll be discussing the details with those three later, so are you going to message them now? I can't imagine them hanging around the party, especially after the rather awkward mood we left it back there. Nimue asked. True. I'll probably send them a message to meet me at the teleport shrine in a few moments so that we can leave for China. Shiro nodded. Do you three want to go to my Manhwa realm or stay outside? She asked. We'll go inside. That way travel is a bit easier. Izul replied as Nimue nodded. Allowing the three back into her Manhwa realm, Shiro patted the dust off her dress and stood up next to the ledge. Looking down at the ground, she pulled out her phone and sent Nantion, Keiko, and Kiyomi a message to meet her at the teleport shrine. Once she was sure that they received her message, she stood up and hopped off the roof. During her fall, she quickly disguised herself so that she was not recognized by the people. Not only that, but she also set up an illusion so that people wouldn't see a random person jumping off the building. Making her way to the teleport shrine rather peacefully, Shiro wondered if she should confess to Lyrica about her relationship with her mother, how they were friends in their first life. I suppose that can wait for when we meet again, if we meet again. Ian and Lysandra are still with the party, so there's a good chance that I'll meet them at least once. Shiro thought with a shake of her head. Before she could enter the teleport shrine, she caught the silhouette of a familiar figure hanging by the alleys. Sherry's, the very same woman that she had talked for a short while before the celestial trials had begun, stood in the alley while giving her a small wave. Seems like she noticed me, Shiro thought with a frown. You might want to be careful. It seems like she's up to something. Nimue warned. Don't worry, I know. Hey, it's been a while since we've last talked. If I remember correctly, last time you said that you'll consider the proposal of having a chat and making a friend should I make it past a week. Are you up for that chat now? Sherry's asked with a smile. Not exactly. I'm a busy woman and I already have quite a bit on my plate right now. Any more would only be annoying. Shiro replied with a shrug. Quite true considering that you are in high demand. Sherry's chuckled. High demand. Shiro raised her eyebrows. Yup, quite a few patrons have been asking me about you. However, I'm not here due to their requests, but rather due to the new faction master. You may know him as Lucius. He wants me to pass you a message saying that he's finished everything in the faction and you can come to visit at any moment. Should you be ready to visit, just give me a ring and I'll guide you to the faction. Sherry said while handing her a business card of sorts. Looking at the business card, Shiro realized that the card was made from a rather special material that she did not know was salvageable. How the hell did you make a card from the rift? Shiro asked with a frown. Trade secrets. But since you're quite familiar with the rift, just break the business card in it, and I'll know that you're ready for business. But for now, I'll bid you adieu. Sherry's bowed slightly before melding into the shadows and disappearing from her spot. Staying silent for a moment, Shiro stored the card away into her inventory. However, her guard was now fully up around that woman since she could use the rift, which was still highly mysterious to her. All that she knew so far was that it was a different plane of existence that allowed her to travel through it with ease. Do you think that there are more people like her that can use the rift in Shadow Temple? Nimue asked cautiously. I don't know. Her role in the faction is still a mystery, so the best we can do is guess right now. Shiro shook her head. Turning around, she made her way back to the teleport shrine and decided to deal with this after she finished her business at Mount Everest. She needed to take things slowly and complete them one by one to make sure that they're all done without a hitch. Entering the shrine, she saw Nantion, Keiko, and Kiyomi standing by the side, waiting for her. Sorry I'm late. I met a rather peculiar acquaintance just outside of the shrine. Shiro smiled. No worries. But before we go, are you sure you want to leave the party on that note? Kiyomi asked. It's fine. I've already thought it through. Shiro shook her head. Anyways, let's go. The longer we wait, the more serious the situation becomes. She urged as Nantion nodded his head. Okay, just as a reminder though, we will need to be careful of how we make our way through China, since a single wrong turn could lead us into a nest of high-level monsters. If bad luck follows us, one of the level 500 monsters will be there, and we will be in serious danger. Nantion reminded seriously. MN, I know. We're going straight to Mount Everest without any detours. Shiro nodded. Good. In that case, then I'll teleport us over now. Nantion nodded with a smile and teleported the four of them away. ####. After Shiro's abrupt departure from the party, Ian and Lysandra expressed their desire to stick around with the party for now. The members didn't have any qualms with the decision, while Madison took this moment to take a breather outside. *sigh. Sighing softly the moment she was alone, Madison couldn't help but feel a little regretful at the words that she had spoken during the outburst, but what was said could not be taken back. "TSK, I should have calmed down a little," she muttered with a click of her tongue. She was quite annoyed with herself since her act of selfishness had essentially broken up the party in a bad way. Previously, they knew that Shiro would return since she would promise them that as a minimum. However, now that she had left the party for good, there was no longer that guarantee. Feeling guilty for basically forcing her best friend's love interest out of the party, Madison balled her hands into a fist. Taking a moment to calm herself, she turned around and walked back into the hotel. Seeing that only Lyrica sat by the table, Madison couldn't help but feel embarrassed and shameful. "Where's everyone else?" Madison asked slowly while sitting down near Lyrica. They're taking a moment to digest what had happened before heading out to do a few dungeons to level up. Lyrica replied, but her eyes seemed a little hollow, as if she had just lost the light in her life. Seeing this, Madison felt like a knife had just stabbed her gut. "Lyrica, it's fine. Things had already happened, and we can't change that. Just keep your head up for now and get stronger. Perhaps we can reach a class before the new age comes. After all, even if Shiro left the party, the new generation wouldn't suddenly decide to stop its approach. We still need to get ready." Lyrica smiled before standing up and leaving. Understanding that it was a forced smile, Madison bit her bottom lip and stayed silent. She realized that her actions might have just started a domino effect within the party, and at this point, it was too late to stop it. After they disappeared from the teleport shrine, Shiro found herself standing in the middle of a relatively simple garden of sorts. Tall trees surrounded them, with mystic lights floating around like fireflies. In the distance, they could see a mountain range of sorts with buildings built along the edges. Pathways were carved out in the mountain along with a main hall of sorts located at the very top. Bridges could be seen connecting from each mountain to another, while there were a few flat paved-out areas around the sect where people would have a friendly spar. "Welcome to the sect's branch area. We'll go to the treasury for now and see if we can get anything to assist us in the journey." Nantion smiled while walking forward. Are you sure? Isn't the treasury meant to be for the sect? Are you sure it's okay to just give us some items?" Shiro furrowed her brows. "Of course, since I collected most of them myself. Though if you want, we can make it so that you are only allowed to take certain items." "How's that?" Nantion suggested. "That would be better." Shiro nodded. Making their way through the garden, Shiro could see a few distant figures approaching them. "Branchmaster, you've returned," they said at the same time and bowed slightly. "MN, no need to bow. These three are my guests, and one of them is a new member of the sect. As the rules state, I shall take responsibility for them." Nantion smiled. "Understood. Do you need us to do anything for you?" one of the men asked respectfully. "You don't have to trouble yourselves. We won't be here for long." Nantion waved as they all nodded and left the area. "Seems like you've got a pretty good reputation in your sect." Shiro raised her eyebrows since she could detect awe, reverence, and respect in the member's eyes. Well, I am the branch master after all. Nan Tian chuckled as he went to rub the bridge of his nose as usual, but realized that his mask was in the way. Coughing lightly, he showed them the way to the treasury. So why do you not show your face around here? Shiro asked curiously. Because I only want you to see my face. Nan Tian joked as Shiro immediately jabbed him in the ribs lightly. Be serious. Shiro rolled her eyes. Fine, fine. It's because showing my face has almost turned the sect upside down, because one of the elders' granddaughters took a fancy on me when I was still a rather low-ranking member. We had a few conflicts, but nothing major happened in the end after I was taken in by the sect master for training purposes. Nantian replied. Oh, but don't worry. I'll keep myself pure and dedicated only to you. He chuckled. Right. Speaking of people taking a fancy to you, whatever happened to the second-rate hacker girl from before? Huan Air or something? Shiro asked. Her? She's been transferred to another branch as her skill set has evolved quite a bit. Before, she could only hack into devices, but after one of her class ups, she's able to insert machines into a person's body and control them like puppets. She's quite a tricky opponent if you're on the same level. Right now, she's being trained by one of the elders proficient in control since he sees great potential in her. Nantian replied. Is that so? Quite interesting if you had to ask me. Shiro raised her eyebrows as this was quite a unique skill. She knew of puppeteers that used mana strings, but not one that uses machines aside from her. Sure, she could do the same, but she preferred to use her own hands to accomplish the tasks. That is quite true. I've seen her trying her skill set out, and I have to say, it was quite a sight to behold. Nantian nodded his head. Arriving at the treasury, Nantian allowed the three of them to enter the vault and explore it however they wanted. Shiro wasn't too bothered about weapons or armor since she had two that were soul-bound and upgraded as she leveled up. If anything, she could just get Helion to help further upgrade them some more. However, she still had to look around to see if there were anything of use such as alchemy materials or weapon upgrades much like the soul weapon upgrade and the soul-bound armor upgrade she had obtained earlier. Looking through the materials, she was rather surprised to find a few that she needed in order to craft the Boreas Rebirth pill. While her links were fully repaired, consuming the pill would further amplify her ice element, so it was still beneficial. Glancing into her inventory, she noted that she had already collected the Underworld Ice Rose, Glacial Lotus Blood, and the Sacred Frost Jade. In Nantian's armory, she could spot what seems to be the Tears of Winter and the Millennium Ice Dragon's essence, the latter of which could have been used to create a very powerful weapon that was soul-bound due to the properties of a high-level material. Lil Tian, how much would this Tears of Winter and Ice Dragon's essence cost? Shiro called out while pointing at the two materials. You don't want a weapon or armor? Nantian raised his eyebrows. No, it's fine. I've already got a good friend of mine to make them for me, so all I need are materials or upgrade modules for my current weapon and armor. Shiro replied. Well, you can take them for free since there isn't much use for them. The Millennium Ice Dragon's essence was hard to forge despite being a rare material, and one that belonged to a dragon mainly due to its elemental affinity being ice. It made it extremely hard for any smith to combine the essence with their weapon since it could put out the flames of the forge. As for the Tears of Winter, the same applied to alchemists. Fusing this with their concoction would turn the entire thing to slush, so I haven't found much use for these two other than its rarity. Nantian shrugged. I see, but are you sure you don't want me to pay for it? I am considered a member of your faction, so surely there is a point system I can use to buy these, right? Shiro raised her eyebrows. There is, but since these are dubbed useless materials, they're worth virtually nothing aside from their collation value. Just take them. Compared to the other things I have in this treasury, it's worth nothing. Nantian waved his hand as Shiro nodded and stored them into her inventory. Now that she had collected two more materials, she only needed to obtain the Sub-Zero Spirit Essence, the Crystallized Divine Nuclei, and the Eternal Ice Heart in order to craft the Boreas Rebirth pill. Once she did that, her ice element would receive another boost which should put it in the mid to high tier range of a class elemental attunements. As Keiko and Kiyomi were picking a weapon that would suit them, Shiro heard the sound of rapid footsteps and glanced towards the entrance of the treasury. At the entrance, there were three men and a woman that looked to be around their 30s. Glancing at their stats, Shiro was rather surprised to see that they were all in the A class. Bai Li Qiu, the woman, was a level 250 martial sage. She had long black hair that was tied into a ponytail and a martial attire that made it easy for her to move around while keeping most of her skin under wraps. A reserved woman. Su Bo Qin, one the men, was a level 260 array grandmaster. The other two men seemed to be twins as they had rather similar features to one another. The first twin was called Yin Qi and was a level 250 poison saint, while the second twin, Yin Xiao Li, was a level 255 void blade grandmaster. Branchmaster, you've returned. They smiled and bowed respectfully. MN, I won't be staying for long though. I'll be leaving once these two pick a weapon. In the meantime, if there's anything important, just tell me now. Nantian nodded. Of course. So far, we've already finished the cleanup process of your last mission and recovered quite a bit of intel in regard to the Black Monarchy. There are signs to say that their next target would be a city near the front lines, but we haven't narrowed it down to which city yet. Bai Li Qiu replied. I see. In that case, then allocate a few of the members within the mainland to assist those near the front lines. Once they find traces of any suspicious movement, they are to report to us immediately. Have them take a few teleport nodes too, so that they can bring in reinforcements easily. Nantian ordered. Understood. Bai Li Qiu nodded. Branchmaster, if I may be as rude to ask, but who is this young lady next to you? So Bo Qin asked. Since Shiro still had her disguise activated, she looked like a rather plain woman who was standing next to their revered branchmaster. Oh, her. She's someone I want to make my wife. Nantian chuckled. Oi. Hearing his intention, Shiro's smile twitched as she glanced up at him. However, the moment she glanced up, she noticed that he was nowhere to be seen. Did he just run away? Shiro muttered as her smile twitched. I'm pretty sure that if he stayed, you would have pierced him by now. Nimue chuckled. I mean, you're not wrong, but does he have to run so quickly? It's not like I can harm him so easily to begin with. I'd say it's more a matter of pride. He is in front of his subordinates after all. Losing his first time this way would be quite a way to ruin his reputation after all. While Nimue and Shiro were talking to each other, Keiko and Kiyomi were standing not too far behind her with their chosen weapons. Seeing that Nantian had disappeared, they looked down at the weapons and wondered if they should put it back. At the same time, even the elders were surprised to their core. Their branch master, one that had been neutral with everyone in the sect apart from the sect master, had actually declared that he wanted to make this girl his wife and ran away before she could even respond. How should we address this, miss? Su Bo Qin asked respectfully. I'll just call me Shiro. So, your branch master said that we're allowed to take something from the vault, so would my cousin and sister be allowed the weapon? Shiro asked while glancing towards Keiko and Kiyomi. Of course, since most of the treasury was obtained through the branch master's efforts, he has the most say in how it's distributed. Su Bo Qin nodded his head. I see, thank you. Oh, before you go, do you know where your branch master got his romantic advice? Stalking a girl is not exactly the best way to go about things. Shiro asked as she decided to get revenge through exposing some of his deeds. I'm not too sure, but the branch master stalked a girl? Su Bo Qin tilted his head. Yes he did. Not exactly the best move considering the fact that I didn't even know that he was a friend of mine back then. Honestly, if he had continued, I would have tried to pierce him with a spear or two. Shiro sighed. Wait, what? Su Bo Qin paused for a moment as he had just heard something incredibly weird. You would have stabbed the branch master? He asked hesitantly. Emin? Yeah. I won't go into detail since I think it's better for you not to know. Anyways, just tell your branch master to meet me back at the teleport shrine so that we can actually start to make our way to Mount Everest. Shiro waved her hand as she was about to walk away. However, before she could, Nantian returned with a smile. You called. Never mind. How do we get out of this place? I don't want us to stop for too long since Yuki is still trapped. Shiro sighed. Right then, follow me. Nantian smiled as he quickly dismissed the elders before showing Shiro the way out of the branch. As they were making their way through, Shiro's presence next to Nantian caught a few of the members' attention as they were curious about who she was. But since Nantian never introduced her to them, it meant that they didn't need to know, so they didn't ask. Arriving at the edge, Nantian brought out a badge of sorts and presented it to the barrier. A faint halo of light could be seen pulsing out as an opening formed within the barrier. Step through this, and we'll be within Hanten Forest. There shouldn't be anything too insane within this, as most of the monsters average around level 200, giving you a decent challenge should you bump into one. Of course, with me, your cousin and your sister here, I doubt the monsters will threaten us at all. He chuckled as Shiro only shrugged. RBEpsilon. Pulling out her phone, Shiro checked their location on the map and realized that they were quite deep into China, as it would take a few days to reach the edge if they weren't in a hurry. If they were in a hurry and used their skills to travel faster, there was a chance that they could attract unwanted attention from the 3 high-level monsters, so they needed to be careful. Mapping out a route that they could take, the 4 of them started their journey north. ####. Deep within the caverns of a mountain, a large figure suddenly reared her head back as her snake tongue flickered out her mouth for a moment. A queen has arrived, she muttered as her hair started to writhe around in a grotesque manner. I must consume and conquer. The Gorgon hissed as she made a hole in the ground and proceeded to slither away from her nest. While this was happening, a similar scene was playing out as a dragon opened his eyes slowly. A queen has made her presence known within this territory of man. Has she taken their side? I must see which race she belongs to before choosing what must be done. He growled deeply. Spreading out his wings, he was about to fly up into the sky when a figure blocked his path. I'm afraid you'll have to keep me company first, the man said coldly as he slammed his hands down. A sudden hailfire of light pierced down from the sky as the dragon was forced back onto the ground. Who are you? The dragon growled, clearly annoyed by the sudden intruder. My name is of no concern to someone that is about to die. Just know that you're about to become nourishment for a god. Not everyone is as lucky as you are, so offer your head willingly, and I shall make this painless. Fight back, and not a single scale will be intact after I'm done with you. The figure warned as light danced around him. I care not of your identity as a god. Whether that be true or not, know this. I bow to N, O God. I serve only Her Majesty the Queen. The dragon declared as a crimson radiance exuded from his body, sending waves of heat into the surrounding area, melting it with every passing second. Then pay for your heresy. The figure scoffed as mana flared around him. Light flickered in the sky, transforming themselves into an array of weapons that surrounded the dragon. As the first light blades slashed against the mighty dragon, a deep burn mark could be seen, branded onto the dragon's scales. Despite his abnormal resistance to fire, these swords could still burn him like nothing. Crying out in a rage, the dragon knew that this was a fight that he had to fight without holding anything back, even at the cost of sacrificing some of his life essence to power his spells. As the two fought, the land seemed to cry for mercy as mountains were destroyed while lakes were evaporated. The people that sensed this fight immediately reported to the higher authorities as the martial hero, Ling Tian, was quickly notified about this calamity. Rushing out of his quarters, he immediately made his way towards the north of China. He knew that there lay 3 monsters that could warrant a peak tier 5 task force to take down, and the best he could accomplish right now was to force them back. Should 2 of them be fighting right now, the only thing he could do was pray that they were far from the cities. After all, those at the beginning of a class could summon hell with a wave of their hand, never mind those at the peak of a class. As for the final monster ruling the areas around China, its figure was shrouded with shadows and mist. A pair of purple eyes pierced the veil as nostalgia seemed to flicker in its gaze. A new queen rises. How long have I waited? Should I report my findings to the capital, or shall I visit the new queen myself? The figure tilted its head as their body swayed in the wind. I suppose I shall see with my own eyes. I will be the judge of the new queen. If she is not up to standard, only death shall follow. The figure narrowed its eyes as the mist coagulated into a single figure. A woman that had ice-white skin and black hair that seemed to shimmer with hints of purple. She had long ears like an elf and a pair of purple eyes that was surrounded by a black scara rather than white. Estrella, spirit guardian of realms. Making their way across the northern side of China, the group bumped into a few beasts that were extremely hostile to her compared to the monsters in dungeons. Normally, they would run away and cower while these wanted her head regardless of the cost. Thinking of this, Shiro decided to make a few items in order to prevent them from running into extremely high-level monsters. Excusing herself for a moment, she jumped into the rift. Right then, I'll need a mini satellite system of sorts, so keep an eye out for dangers. Since I heard that it's very hard to keep objects suspended in the sky, along with the fact that none of the attempts at sending satellites to space have worked, I'll probably need to make a scouting one just to examine what the upper atmosphere of this world is like. She muttered while adding a few new components to the orb itself. There were a few that allowed the orb to retaliate if needed, but it was mostly components to help it stay hidden in case of any high-level flying-type monsters. Thinking about it for a moment, it would be slightly awkward to keep on excusing herself to send more scouts. Therefore, one of the better options would be for her to infuse this single scout with a few blueprints of mini satellites so that it could dispense these in the sky once it was sure that the place was secure. Nodding her head, she proceeded to add more parts to the orb. The entire process took her a few minutes since she already had prior knowledge on how she should combine and balance out the components. After all, gathering intel was very important in Arya, and the scouting orbs were something that she worked on for a short period of time. Of course, that was only until she took over every single satellite that they had sent to space with her nanobots. It was also due to this that she could put up a decent fight against the light hero, as orbital cannons would be fired from every single satellite that was near the zone, giving her that extra edge despite being weakened. Once the orb was finished, Shiro nodded in satisfaction before hopping out of the rift at a different location. Activating the stealth skill that she had embedded into the orb, she threw it up into the air and allowed it to fly as high as it could. Making herself a pair of glasses, she could see what the orb was surveying through the left lens while the right displayed the internal status. That way, she could make detailed repairs without bringing the orb back down. Jumping back into the rift, she regrouped with Nantion, Keiko, and Kiyomi. "Where did you go, and when did you get a pair of glasses?" Kiyomi asked curiously as they could not see the holographic display that was only visible from Shiro's side of the lenses. "These? Well, I want to check on something, but it wasn't anything too serious. As for these glasses, I just so happened to find them in my inventory, and they looked quite interesting." Shiro smiled as Nantion raised his eyebrows. "Never thought that you would be one to wear glasses." He chuckled. "Well, it's good to change the outfit every once in a while. It'll be awfully boring to stick with the same plain old outfit for several months now, wouldn't it? To be honest, I should probably make a few adjustments to my outfit. Maybe I can get Aram to do this for me once I've finished with my task." Shiro smiled. Even though she's left the party, it wasn't as if they stopped being friends, so asking Aram for a commission should still be fine. Thinking back to the party, Shiro checked her phone and saw quite a few messages from Aram and Sylvia. Unfortunately, there were no messages from Lyrica and Madison, which pained Shiro a little, but at least they should be relatively safe. Tapping on their names, she checked Aram's messages first. "There's not much I can say, especially since the rather sudden departure, but just know that I will continue to support you in ways that I can should you need it. To be honest, I understand why you decided to do this alone, since one of us is guaranteed to die if we fought against a horde of enemies. Even with the capabilities of my control spell, I still find it hard to restrain those that are much higher level than me. I'll continue to develop spells that can help the party catch up to you, so that you all can reunite with each other in the near future, hopefully. Perhaps a spell that is strengthened depending on how much the enemy struggles? Smart people can get out of it quickly, but it should still provide a few seconds of respite if I succeed, haha. Anyways, I'll try looking after the party with your two daughters so you can do your task without worries. Alphanu." Smiling softly, Shiro was glad that Aram could continue to look forward and find ways to get stronger. She would need that if she wanted to survive the next age. Switching to Sylvia's tab, Shiro read her message. "I'll be honest with you, Shiro, since we've had our ups and downs, especially considering my last party. Both you and Maddie are quite stubborn. She chose to tank so that she could share and take the burden off the shoulders of the party, while you like to take everything on by yourself so that we would be safe. Both of you have views on keeping the party safe, but it seems the final straw has been unfortunately snapped due to this incident. Maddie was tired of having you take everything on by yourself since you're endangering your life at the expense of keeping us safe, and in all honesty, I feel like you and Maddie are very similar in certain areas. Unfortunately, Life is unfair, and it seems like the danger just keeps increasing, especially with the Ragnarok-like situation coming in the future. I also think that Maddie understands this, which is why she got annoyed at the fact that we couldn't help you as much as we could despite trying so hard. Perhaps what happened is good for the party so that we can all find our callings in order to get stronger individually. Who knows? Next time we regroup could be when everyone is a class. Of course, I hope that isn't the situation, since friendships grow with the hardships that we endure with one another. This was probably one of Maddie's reasonings, since she is always the relaxed one in the group despite all the shenanigans that happen. Seeing her outburst made me realize how much she was enduring. She is still young after all. As for you, you made me realize your determination in keeping everyone safe, which of course is good in nature. But as many would say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that they will challenge high-level monsters to get stronger. This could be risky, as there's always the chance of it being much harder than we anticipated and die in the process. A grim note, but a realistic one, unfortunately. Anyways, it hurts me to see good friends being split apart, so come back when you can and resolve this misunderstanding, okay? Lyrica's probably the most affected, since you know what her feelings are like for you. Seeing that you suddenly excavated yourself from her life as such must be quite a devastating impact for her. Anyways, just know that me and Chinyu hope you stay safe out there, and good luck with your task. Reading through Sylvia's messages, Shiro couldn't help but agree with her thoughts. Yes, she was stubborn, and she understood that. Perhaps what she needed is for the party to punch her in the face, telling her how strong they had become and that they didn't need her protection. That they weren't the level 10 hatching adventurers that she once knew them to be. However, until that happened, Shiro was going to continue to shoulder her burdens alone. That was who she was. You have good friends. Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded. MN, they're the best ones I can ask for, she said with a soft smile. Storing the phone away in her inventory, she looked on with renewed vigor. Making their way across China, they had to traverse quite a few mountain ranges, which wasn't too hard considering their level. Whenever Shiro discovered a potentially dangerous entity, she would either send a flaming arrow to deal with it or warn the party, allowing them to take it out swiftly. This allowed the journey to be relatively relaxed, as nothing too serious had happened due to the satellite system scouting out everything around them. Deciding to camp out for the night, Shiro opted to take the third watch, while Keiko and Kiyomi took first and second. Naturally, the final watch went to Nantion, who didn't have any qualms with it. I doubt anything would happen, but take this just in case. Shiro smiled and handed Keiko an orb of sorts. What's this? Keiko raised her eyebrows curiously. It's something I've developed on my own. Should you be in a dire situation, just throw this orb at the enemy, and it should wrap around their body, canceling all of their mana for a short period of time, which should be just enough for you to deal with them. Shiro smiled. Well, damn. I don't even want to know what it'll be like if this was mass-produced. Assassinations would be a breeze all over the world. Keiko shuddered to think what kind of chaos this could cause in the world. Looking at Shiro, who gave her this murder tool with ease, Keiko thought of two words that describe her perfectly. Pandora's box. She was a box containing knowledge and power, but the price for this would be the chaos it causes in the world. Not only did she have the blueprints of her twin hand cannons that could kill people with ease, but she also had an orb that canceled out a mage's most powerful tool. Shiro, are you sure you're a mage? What kind of mage carries things like this? Keiko asked jokingly. Well, if I was a common mage, I would have died quite a few times in this current life. Shiro smiled while walking back to her own tent. Opening the tent flap, she was half expecting to see Nantion laying on her bedroll with a pose or something, but her worries were for naught. Damn, hanging out with this guy has made it so that I'm being cautious around every corner in case I'm caught off guard by his advances. Shiro thought with a frown. Shaking her head, she tapped her glasses a few times and had her satellites roam the surrounding areas, scanning further and further away from camp. Once that was done, she rested her body and went to sleep. The first few hours of the night were relatively peaceful, as the satellites didn't detect anything major, so Shiro could sleep with ease. The same happened with Kiyomi, but she had to deal with a few monsters that got a little too close, but they were dealt with ease. However, on the third shift, Shiro saw that her satellites seemed to have detected something big within the outskirts of its detection range. Furrowing her brows, Shiro activated a camera function on the satellite and tried to get a closer look. Hoping that it wasn't one of the 3 level 500 monsters in the area, she controlled the satellite carefully. Thankfully, the monster that the satellite picked up seemed to be a large turtle that had a small forest on its back. Looking through the camera, she could see the turtle crawl out of the ground and move away from their location. Phew, it's nothing too big. Shiro sighed in relief since fighting here was not an option. Once they fought, the mana fluctuations would no doubt draw more attention, causing hordes of monsters to charge towards them. Should that happen, escaping would be very hard since they could probably just track where her rift opened up once more. Though it's quite strange, the satellites should have picked up on the turtle much earlier than this. How come it only discovered it double-each? Wait a minute. Why are the fluctuations different? Shiro narrowed her eyes as she noticed a small inconsistency in her scans. The first fluctuation the satellites detected was much sharper, while the turtle's was rather mellow, meaning there were 2 monsters rather than 1. Standing up, Shiro had a serious expression on her face. This monster must be adept in stealth, she muttered before quickly waking up everyone in the tent. And what's going on? Keiko asked while rubbing her eyes. There seems to be a monster adept in stealth near here. I barely detected it for a moment before they replaced themselves with a different monster to mask their presence. Shiro said as they all sobered up and quickly packed their things. Then we should probably move through the night. Fighting would only make matters worse, Nantion suggested. Agreeing with his suggestion, the party started to travel through the night while making sure to constantly keep a watch on their surroundings. ####. Oh dear, seems like you've startled the queen. Estrella chuckled while glancing at the Gorgon that she had forcefully dragged into her dimension. In order to try pulling off a bluff, she had summoned a different monster in her place, but it didn't seem to work. The Gorgon, clearly enraged by her actions, hissed at her while mana surged. You wish to fight? I can keep you company. However, you have bigger uses for me. You are to test my queen-to-be and see if she's qualified. Estrella smiled, floating towards the Gorgon gracefully. Like hell, I'll take orders from you. The Gorgon replied as her hair lashed out at her, only to phase through without doing anything to Estrella. This is my realm, as the guardian of realms. Merging 2 realms into one so that it seems like I'm here is quite a simple task. Estrella chuckled while swiping her hand. Suddenly, the realm around them seemed to twist and stretch as hundreds of eyes snapped open in the shadows. Do you want to keep my cute beasts company or conduct the test for me? She asked once more. Without swaying anything, the Gorgon only swept her gaze at the eyes as she tried to petrify them. Unfortunately, this only caused Estrella's smile to turn into a mocking grin. A faint veil of white seemed to wash over the beast's eyes as the magic was reflected back at the Gorgon. Her skin, which was resistant to her own petrification, started to solidify much to her confusion. These beasts were quite special as they had an innate skill which allowed them to either reduce or completely nullify an entity's resistance to a certain element or magic. For the Gorgon, they were able to weaken her resistance to petrification and reflect the magic back at her with a simple spell. Their physical potential was quite weak, but they were the perfect counter to entities that like to send out curses or status ailments. TSK. Seems like I'll need to be forceful. I'll be honest though, I would have had a harder time if not for the Queen's ascension. Her presence really boosted my powers over dimensions. Perhaps she has a similar skill? Regardless, I still need you to test her, little snake. But you being level 500 is a little high for my liking. Why don't we cut you down a little? Estrella's gaze turned cold as her chuckle echoed in the realm. Dread filled the Gorgon's heart as she grits her teeth and prepared to fight back with everything she's got. ####. Continuing their journey through the night, the party made quite a bit of progress as they soon reached what seemed to be a rural village. The village itself was in rather good condition, much to Shiro's surprise since the surrounding area was fraught with danger. Deciding to take a short break so that they could have some breakfast, Shiro allowed Adi, Nimue, and Izul to come out for a bit. Walking around the village, they soon found a small family-run restaurant that sold noodles and ordered a few bowls. Excuse me, Shiro called out, wanting to get some of her questions answered. Yes. A young girl that looked around 16 replied with a cheerful smile. I'm just curious about this village. The surrounding area is filled with high-level monsters, yet everyone here is quite carefree. Are you able to tell me why? Shiro asked. A lot of people that come by here are curious too. It's mostly due to the monster wards that the martial hero had placed here. It allows us to live here in peace as we're not able to travel to the big cities. The girl replied with a smile. Plus, we've also got some defensive measures in case someone wants to cause trouble. We know it works since we've been under attack by some bandits before, but they were driven away. She continued. I see, thank you. Shiro nodded. You're welcome. Enjoy your meal. The girl waved and went back to work. So Keiko, are you able to tell me more about this martial hero? I'm quite curious. Shiro asked. Sure. Keiko nodded as she started to recount her time with the martial hero during one of the world conferences. Let's see. The most recent meeting I had with the martial hero was not too long ago, so I'll tell you my thoughts from that, okay? Keiko asked. Sure. Shiro nodded as she crossed her legs. Grabbing a cup from the table, she filled it with some juice that she always kept in her inventory and waited patiently. If I had to use a few words, I would say he's protective. He hardly ventures out of China if possible, unless it truly demands his attention. I'd say it's due to the nature of having so many high-level monsters within the country that his presence is required to keep the people safe. Should there ever be a monster horde, he'll be the first to try to stop it. Keiko said while leaning back a little. Heh, sounds like he'll be overworking himself, dashing across the country to keep everyone safe and fend off the monsters. Shiro replied as Keiko nodded. Yeah, if you see him, you'll notice that despite his long lifespan and level, he always looks as if he's 1 foot in the grave due to exhaustion. To actually exhaust a hero to this extent, how many years has he been guarding this place again? Shiro asked curiously as a hero's stamina should be monstrous. I think he's been protecting China for around 20 to 25 years now, though I'm not too sure. When he first became the martial hero, he was still protecting China, and no one knew when he had started. Keiko shook her head. Damn, 20 to 25 years, huh? Shiro muttered. During her time in the hero's party in Aria, it was a bit more relaxed despite working for quite a few years as well. If anything, the most stressful time was when she was stuck inside a mutated dungeon for 3 years. Thinking back, she understood that it was highly abnormal since within the 3 years, she was left to wander a desert-like area where she had to resort to eating everything she could find within the 3 years. Not only that, but there were no boundaries either, so it was hard to get a grasp on where she was. Damn, if Ferris didn't force open a portal back then, I might have been caught in the dungeon for much longer than 3 years. Shiro thought to herself. Who's Ferris? Nimue asked curiously. Oh, it's just a friend of mine that was also in the hero's party. To be honest, I never knew what really happened to her since I was, killed. She was one of the mages within the party, and she taught me a few tricks. Not that I really needed it back then, as I had my Snowmancer class. Shiro replied with a shrug. When she recalled the group the hero party, it was almost like an organization, if anything. Lots of people wanted to be in the same party as the hero, and they were all very talented. To resolve the problem of lots of people wanting to join, he made it so that there were a few key members and sub-members that would join in depending on the situation and their skill set. Shiro and Isilia were naturally part of the main group, while Ferris started as a sub-member but became part of the main group after quite a few impressive feats. Shaking her head, Shiro dismissed her thoughts since she was no longer part of the hero's party and she had no way to get back to Aria. Not that she wanted to, of course. She had a family and a group of trusted friends in this life. Why would she want to abandon that? Before Shiro could ask some questions about the martial hero, she suddenly stood up and ran outside, confusing Keiko, Kiyomi, and Nantion as she would normally say what she was going to do unless it was urgent. Quickly following behind her, they saw a giant rift open up as it was quite similar to the rift that Shiro would open up. How many people are going to use the rift? I thought it was a phoenix thing. Shiro cried out in her mind as she felt an ominous presence within the rift. Glancing around her, she could already see the panicked faces of the civilians as they scrambled to run away. TCH, are you able to help me close that portal or move whatever is in it away from this village? Shiro called out to Nantion, who nodded his head. Of course. He smiled. Jumping up into the air, a Tier 4 magic circle erupted out beneath him as he tried to tamper with the portal. However, His spell did nothing as a pulse of magic exploded out in retaliation. Was that supposed to happen? Shiro raised her eyebrows. Asterisk cough. Not quite. Let me put some back into it. Nan Tian replied in embarrassment as he stared daggers at the portal. Damn, how dare you embarrass me in front of Shiro? He thought with a frown as his mana surged. A Tier 5 magic circle erupted out of him as he tried to forcefully move the portal once more. Unfortunately for him, his intervention seemed to have caused the rift to grow larger. With this, a scaled hand reached out from the rift and ripped it open, allowing the main body to fall down and crash into several houses. Gorgon, LVL 350 weakened. HP, for 20, 951, 500/ MP, /. Seeing the Gorgon, Nan Tian immediately recognized it to be one of the 3 major monsters that roamed China. However, compared to its original appearance, the Gorgon he's looking at was nothing alike. Scales were ripped out as blood oozed from every part of her. Most of her tail was shredded with the bone clearly visible to any onlooker. If one were to tug the flesh, it would peel off the bone easily due to the few thin strands of flesh that held everything together. Suddenly, more rifts opened up under Nan Tian, Keiko, and Kiyomi as the gravity pulled them down. *T. Cursing out in shock, Nan Tian's body was engulfed into the rift before he could even try to move. Don't let her see your body. He shouted out to Shiro since he could see that she was the only one who wasn't affected by the rift. Seeing her 3 companions disappear into a different dimension, Shiro tried to activate her own rift in order to catch up to them, but felt a resistance that stopped the portal from opening. Understanding that this was clearly the doing of a powerful entity, she tried to think of ways to save the 3 that were taken away. However, before she could do that, she had to deal with the Gorgon in front of her. Quickly rolling behind some cover so that the Gorgon could not see her, Shiro knew that she had to be extremely careful. Even without Nan Tian's warning, she knew that the moment the Gorgon laid eyes on her body, she would be petrified. Sure, she could use her skills to reverse the injuries taken, but how long could she keep that up? Taking a deep breath, she created a small drone to peek around the corner in her steed. Checking the camera, Shiro saw the hate-filled eyes of the Gorgon that looked towards her general location. Queen, you shall be my meal. Once I consume you, I can get my revenge. The Gorgon hissed as her body lashed towards her at blinding speeds. Holy *T. Crying out in shock at her approach, she immediately activated her Berserk skill, Frenzied Incarnation EX, and produced a layer of nanotech amour over her body. A deep murderous aura erupted from her body black, and silver metallic particles swarmed her body before forming into a set of armor. Activating the thrusters behind her, Shiro dashed out of her cover. Creating a grenade in her hands, she immediately infused it with her star element in order to create a flashbang. Throwing it towards the Gorgon's face, she hoped that it would be able to blind her for a split moment. Unfortunately, the Gorgon turned her head away the moment she saw something fly towards her face. Within a single second, light filled the area as Shiro felt relieved to see that her armor was still normal. This meant that a mere glance would not petrify her as long as the gaze does not linger on her. Quickly stomping down, for thick metal walls erupted out from the ground and surrounded the Gorgon. Shiro was going to use the moment it takes for the Gorgon to break through the wall to create a few weapons along with seeing if she could detect the culprit behind this. Slamming her hands down on the ground, nanobots started to surge outwards as Shiro quickly pulled up a few blueprints she had in her mind. With the state of her mana links and the sheer amount of MP she could access, she could create some of her favorite weapons. Namely, a pair of Gatling cannons with specialized ammunition. As she started to drag her hand off the ground, the nanobots started to condense together into the shape of a large-scale minigun. Necrolite, nanotech Gatling cannon. With a matte black chassis that emitted an ominous purple aura around the edge, the Gatling cannon was a sight to behold. Creating a few stabilizers behind her so that she wasn't blown away the moment she fired this gun, Shiro added a few more layers of armor so that she could stand up to the Gorgon's petrifying gaze for a little longer. As for the bullet that was being fired from the Gatling gun, each one was comparable to a sniper shot from one of her earlier prototypes. With hundreds of sniper shots being fired at an astounding speed, one could see why this was one of Shiro's favorite weapons. Asterisk bang. Pulling the trigger, the first bullet smashed past the metal walls and dug itself deep into the Gorgon's scales, causing blood to flow out into the ground. However, this was just the beginning. Following the first bullet, the second bullet was fired. Then the third, fourth, and so on. Soon, all that Shiro could hear was the sound of hundreds of bullets being fired. At this point, her metal walls were completely obliterated as the Gorgon was being forced back a little from the impact. While this was happening, Shiro made sure to aim the weapons a little higher up so that she wouldn't be destroying the village that they were in. Incensed by the repeated barrage of bullets that dug deeply into her injuries, the Gorgon swiped her hand down as the ground split apart beneath her and swallowed her in. Seeing this, Shiro felt danger assault her senses as she quickly opened the emergency hatch on her armor and dived to the side. Sliding her hand across the ground, she froze the floor in order to make it easier for her to slide into cover. Asterisk boom. Just as she dived out of the way, a pair of hands erupted out of the ground and ripped the cannon and armor in half. Yikes, if I was any slower, I would have died. Shiro clicked her tongue. Do you need help? Me and Azul can come out to dash. Don't even think about it, Nimue. Unlike me, you can't revive yourself with rejuvenation if the situation called for it. Shiro rejected that notion immediately as she stomped down and created more walls of metal. That way, it would allow her some movement. Arnu. Unfortunately, the Gorgon wasn't as cooperative as she raised her hands into the air. Suddenly, a Tier 5 magic circle expanded out in the sky and formed an illusionary serpent eye. Looking up, Shiro immediately felt her body freeze up as stones started to form around her body. *T. Cursing at her sudden lapse in attention, Shiro made the drastic decision of controlling ataraxia to cut off the parts of her body that were being petrified at a rapid pace, while also creating a metal wall above her to block the eye. However, the situation was not looking good since 60% of her body was already turned to stone, and that percentage was growing quickly. Furrowing her brows, she controlled her magic so that an ice pillar would pierce her stomach before exploding and shredding her body to pieces. That way, she could activate her rejuvenation skill with the best effects. Of course, the pain was going to be quite unbearable, but it wasn't anything new to Shiro. Gritting her teeth, she quickly braced herself as the pillar smashed through her stomach and lacerated her body. While parts of her body were flying through the area, she activated her skill, rejuvenation, and healed herself back up. Phew. Sighing in relief, she glanced down at her body and felt glad that none of it was turned to stone. TCH. With this, I only have the Lire rune for health regen should I be almost killed again. Shiro thought with a frown. With the secondary option of her Lire rune that was attached to ataraxia, she could sacrifice all of the sword's durability in order to regenerate her health to max meaning. She'd have another attempt at shredding her body before regenerating to her peak. However, doing so would mean her sword would be out of combat. Not only that, but it also meant that she'd be missing out on a potential Gorgon killer within her arsenal. The Era rune. The secondary option of this rune is that it could sacrifice all of the sword's durability to reflect all the damage taken in the last minute by 200%. If she played her cards well, this could be the skill that kills the Gorgon. Unfortunately for her, the Gorgon mostly had skills that slowly wore down her target rather than killing them instantly. Therefore, saving the last rune for Era might not be as effective as Lire. Glancing over at her current Berserk skill timer, her frenzied incarnation still had a few minutes left as she debated on whether or not she should just stack all of her skills together. After all, she is facing a level 500 boss that was weakened to level 350. If I was to stack every single Berserk skill in my arsenal along with the ones in my database, can my body even hold that kind of power? Shiro wondered to herself. Even without looking into her database, she already had a few Berserk skills that were some of the best around. The Berserk skill tied to her sword, Ataraxia, made it so that she gained an additional 50% AGI, 50% DX, and 50% STR, while her enemies experienced -40% speed, -40% DF, -20% reaction, and a small chance to lose focus for a short moment of time, exposing their weak points. The duration of this skill was 2 minutes, so she was limited in how long she could keep her peak form. There was also the Berserk skill Akram that was linked with the God-slaying sword, but Shiro wanted to avoid using that at all costs due to Helian's warning. After all, once she stacked up her Berserk skills, her body would no doubt be in a state of complete shutdown. Once that happened, she had a faint feeling that whatever wanted to take over her would probably use that chance. Thankfully, even without the Akram Berserk skill, she still had her soul sword and the Berserk skills in her database. Just as she was about to think about which one she wanted to use, mana surged around her location as she quickly activated a set of Snowmancer armor to wrap around her. Asterisk bang. A pulse of energy shot out as Shiro's body was forced out of cover. Crashing against the ground, she couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood within her helmet. Before she could even reorientate herself, a giant maw appeared in front of her. Inside the mouth, rows upon rows of teeth moved in synchronization as if trying to usher her inside the mouth. Quickly activating her Force of Elements skill, she infused it with every single element that she had an attunement with and jammed the illusionary sword between the Gorgon's mouth. Asterisk crack. Boom. Snapping the sword in half, a shockwave exploded out as Shiro was once again sent crashing back. Rolling across the floor, she could clearly feel a few bones breaking from the impact. Gritting her teeth, she quickly activated all the skills that could help her right now while the outer layer of her nanotech armor started to petrify. Activating Soul Sword, Berserk Path, Ataraxia, and a myriad of other Berserk skills within her database, Shiro then stacked her Celestial Raiment bonus with a new set of nanotech armor. As the skills activated, Shiro felt a surge of pain within her body as power welled up within her. Understanding that she only had a few moments to do something with this power before it disappears, Shiro charged towards the Gorgon while saving the second cast of her armor for the very last moment. After all, the second cast converts 50% of her highest stat into raw power for 30 seconds. With her current stats after being enhanced by all of the Berserk skills that she had activated, that 50% bonus was going to be monstrous. However, before she could do anything, Shiro felt her heart stop mid-beat as blood poured out of all her orifices. While this was all happening, Ian and Lysandra were currently clearing a dungeon with the party when their bodies suddenly froze and started to spasm from pain. Struggling for breath, Ian collapsed on the ground while grasping at her heart. "See crap, Mum's in danger," Ian cried out as she coughed up some blood. Lysandra could not respond at this moment as she was too preoccupied with trying not to pass out from the pain. Hearing that Shiro was in danger, the party paused in shock. Lyrica, who had been down in the dumps, felt a knife pierce her heart after hearing Yin's cry. Widening her eyes, she quickly sent out a wave of sword energy to clear out the room of enemies before dashing over to Yin's side. "What's happened?" she asked desperately. "It's Mum. Her life's in danger," Yin replied as she grabbed onto Lyrica. Her blood smeared against Lyrica's clothes as Sylvia tried to relieve Yin's pain through healing, but that didn't do anything. "What do you mean her life is in danger? How do you know?" Madison also panicked, as this was exactly what she was scared of. Shiro going off on her own and dying while all they could do was sit by and watch. "Contract. I have one with Mom. If she dies, I die." Yin squeezed out while trying to stop her body from spasming due to the pain. As silence descended onto the party, they could only hope that everything was going to be okay while Aram tried her best to think of any new spells that could help with the situation. Unfortunately, nothing came to mind. Clutching her fist, Lyrica stood up and dashed further into the dungeon. "What are you doing?" Aram called out in surprise. "What do you think? I'm gonna kill every King thing here and go to Shiro at a higher level. If that Nan bastard is high level but can't protect her, what's the goddamn point of leaving her to go with him? I'd rather protect her myself." Lyrica shouted back in anger. Hearing this, Madison also stood up as she knew Lyrica was right. Sure, she complained about Shiro leaving them behind to do everything herself, but they could be doing more to catch up to her. If 100% of their efforts wasn't enough to catch up to Shiro, then they'll try twice as hard. If that doesn't suffice, they'll go above and beyond. Shiro has the life of an entire race weighing down her shoulders. It would be cruel to ask her to wait for them. If she levels up fast, then we'll do everything we can to level up faster. Instead of complaining, I should be urging the party on. I'm the main tank. I should improve my defenses so that the party can challenge those much higher level than us. Madison thought to herself as she too charged after Lyrica. Seeing the two girls so fired up in their own way, both Aram and Sylvia smiled lightly. You go after them and help them out. I'll stay behind and look after Ian and Lysandra. I'll try to develop a spell that might be able to help us assist Shiro in the meantime. Aram called out to Sylvia as she nodded her head. Okay, what about you? Sylvia nodded before turning to Chinyu. I'm going to send an emergency notice to the branch sect in China. Hopefully, they're able to give Shiro some assistance. Chinyu replied seriously while looking around for the way that they came in from. All right, good luck. Sylvia nodded before dashing further into the dungeon. ####. Where are we? Nan Tian furrowed his brows as he saw that both Keiko and Kiyomi were in the same dimension as him. I don't know, but it seems like my teleportation is being hindered. I can't get us out of here. Keiko replied with a frown. Shiro's out there fighting a Gorgon, so we need to figure a way out quickly. Kiyomi reminded quickly. Looking around the area, they saw that they were in a rift similar to what Shiro had access to, but this one felt much more dangerous. As if they were being stared down by countless beasts that hunger for their flesh. The queen has some powerful companions. A voice rang out as they quickly turned towards the source. Seeing Estrella sitting idly on a chair while looking towards the three of them, they instantly put up their guard. Who are you? Nantion asked. Estrella, Spirit Guardian of Realms. Former member of the Royal Spirit Council. Estrella introduced herself with a simple smile. If you're a member of the Spirit Council, you should know that Shiro is the new queen of the spirit race. If you kill her now, you'll be extinguishing the spirit race's hope. Nantion warned since he could deduce that she was the cause of the Gorgon being transported to their location along with separating them from Shiro. I do know that she's the new queen and that killing her is detrimental. However, this is a test to see if she is worthy or not. Being the spirit queen is more than what appears on the surface. It's one of the only race queens that can evolve into an empress. For her to become an empress at this level, it meant that she had talent, but that's not enough. She must be able to fight those a whole class above her, as that is the scale of danger that she'll be facing. I cannot allow someone that can't accomplish this to have one of the most powerful classes in the world. If she dies, then I might as well wait for a new queen. Estrella leaned back. From what I know, time is running out, and the spirit race hasn't had a queen in so long. What makes you think that you can find another queen in that time? Keiko asked with a frown. I don't. However, rather than instilling false hope into the race, I'd much rather them fight with their heart and soul for survival. Plus, the greater the hope, the more crushing the despair when it turns out to be fake. The spirit race has already experienced it once with the previous queen. I don't need history to repeat itself. Estrella shook her head. Shiro isn't one to instill false Kiyomi tried to protest, but her sentence was cut short when Estrella snapped her fingers. Talk is cheap. Let's watch her actions to determine if she's worthy or not. And also, don't think I can't sense you trying to break through my realm. Just know that if you do, I'll take it as an attack towards me and retaliate. She warned as Nantion clicked his tongue. Swiping her hands, a portal opened up near her as they could see the battle play out. Oh, the queen is rather peculiar in her magic. Estrella raised her eyebrows when she saw Shiro craft a pair of mini guns from her nanobots. Watching Shiro display her Snowmancer skills one by one, the three couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. Especially Nantion, since this was something he never thought was possible. It also meant that she was currently one of the most wanted people in the world due to her tech. Damn, is there anyone around? If word gets out, Shiro's life would be in danger. Nantion panicked as he scanned the area around Shiro within the portal. Thankfully, it seemed like she was prepared as an illusion barrier could be seen around them. However, their worries only grew when they saw Shiro almost kill herself in order to cancel out the petrification. Drastic choices to guarantee survival. I like that. Estrella smiled as she was rather impressed by what she was seeing so far. Even if she had weakened the Gorgon severely to the point where her level had decreased and most of her skills were sealed, it was still a tall order for Shiro to fight against it. Unfortunately, her smile faded when she saw Shiro destroy her body through the stacking of berserk skills. Berserk skills were known as the final trump card for a reason. They severely harmed your body for a moment of power to guarantee your survival. While you could stack a few Berserk skills together should you have the resources, doing so was advised against as the backlash would stack on top of each other. The best-case scenario was that you could get a few hits in before self-destructing. As for the worst-case scenario, you die before doing anything, and that was what she believed she was witnessing as of this moment. Shaking her head, she was about to dismiss the portal when she saw Shiro stab her own chest with her hand. "What is she doing?" Estrella muttered before widening her eyes in disbelief. "URG." Grunting from the pain of stabbing her own chest, Shiro gritted her teeth and ripped her heart. Not only was her body currently destroying herself with the Berserk skills, but the Gorgon had even managed to petrify some of her insides. Crushing the now stone heart in her hands, nanobots surged within her palm as she created a nanotech heart for now in order to stay alive. Gritting her teeth, Shiro quickly flickered out of sight as she slammed her palms down. Asterisk bang. Sending out a shockwave of cold mist, the surrounding area was instantly converted to a frozen tundra. The blizzard blocked out the sun while the snow obscured her movements. "Damn snake," Shiro cursed while surveying her surroundings. Since her heart was hastily constructed, she hadn't been able to calibrate it properly, so it was akin to shoving a top-tier engine into an old car. While it may run decently for a while, problems are bound to show up soon. Not only that, her Berserk skills had a limited activation time. Once that ran out, she was dead for sure. Swiping her hand in the air, she summoned her soul sword and dashed towards the Gorgon. Takamikazuchi technique. Activating the technique, lightning started to flow across the blade of her soul sword. On top of the Takamikazuchi technique, Shiro also activated her hollow deceit along with Kitoma to make sure that the Gorgon could not resist. With several phantom versions of her assisting in this attack to confuse her enemy, Shiro narrowed her eyes and slashed towards the Gorgon. Before the sword could land, however, Shiro felt danger assault her senses once more and changed locations with a secondary phantom. Asterisk KRRR. Just as she did this, a purple radiance erupted out of the Gorgon's hands and turned everything within a 100-meter cone in front of her to stone. Her phantoms were immediately dispersed after being killed, leaving only two other phantoms that barely managed to dodge out of the way. TCH. Clicking her tongue, Shiro created an ice platform under her foot in order to give her that extra boost. Asterisk Poochie. Slashing her sword across the Gorgon's skin, scales were sent flying as blood poured out. However, she wasn't done yet. Flexing her fingers, a shotgun was formed within her hands as she jammed it into the Gorgon's flesh. Pulling the trigger, Shiro used the recoil to flip off the Gorgon's body. Swiping her hands, another wall of metal erected in front of her, blocking her from the Gorgon's view so that she wasn't petrified. Unfortunately, she could feel her body weakening continuously as the initial boost from the Berserk skill was being worn out. "I need something to kill her in one go," she thought calmly as anger and haste would only ruin things at the current state. Quickly glancing through her stats, her eyes locked onto a skill that she hadn't used often but could prove to be a real game changer: the Chimera Arts. It was a skill that allowed her to fuse two elements together for a short time. If she was to activate this skill and use her Celestial Garden on top of that, the end result should be quite astounding. However, that wasn't enough. Right now, she needed something so volatile that it would eventually destroy the Gorgon's body down to its very core. She still had the unrecognizable skill that she had developed last time in the dungeon, but that was a little too risky. Thinking up to this point, a reckless idea appeared in her mind. But the mere thought of this idea disgusted her to no end. F***ck it. It's either this or death. She gritted her teeth and clasped her hands together, crafting the strongest defense she could around her, so that she could have a moment to act on her outrageous idea. She sat down for a moment and activated Ina's second cast that converted 50% of her highest stat into raw power. This made it so that she only had 30 seconds to do whatever she needed to do. I should be able to do this within 20 seconds, giving me 10 seconds to deal with the Gorgon, Shiro thought to herself before activating the magic circle around her. Recoiling from the pain, she could feel her consciousness fade for a moment as her nanotech heart started to infest her body with nanobots. This was similar to what the scientists had done back when she was in Arya. Right now, she was essentially converting her entire body into a weapon so that she could continuously use her chimera art skill through her self-modification. Inserting several skill chips into her now mechanical body, she started to fuse her elements one by one. Cosmic ice plus apocalyptic lighting, Stygian steel plus astral rift, and so on. As the list continued to shrink, the elements started to run rampant within her body. Forced to constantly repair her mechanical prosthetics, Shiro hoped that she could last just long enough for this to work. And finally, at the 20-second mark, she succeeded. Attunements, error, tier, error. Not caring about the fact that her fusion of elements resulted in an error, Shiro quickly crafted a specialized railgun and inserted a portion of the new element within the camber and aimed it towards the Gorgon that had been trying to break her defenses with large success. Dismissing the walls, she watched as the Gorgon started to petrify her body once more. However, it didn't matter anymore as this was her final stand. No one-liners for you. Snake be *TCH. Shiro cursed and pulled the trigger. Boom. Within a single second, the world seemed to half as the fabric of space started to twist around the Gorgon that had been shot by her gun. Her skin started to break apart before regenerating back to its original state over and over again, while the rest of her body was the same. Panic washed over the Gorgon as she reached out desperately only for her arm to contort and break off. Watching the Gorgon break down within her eyes, Shiro quickly had the nanobots consume as much of her body as they can before activating the Lyrae rune on her sword. Crumbling to dust, the sword faded from her hands as a wave of vitality and energy washed over Shiro, repairing her body back to its pristine condition. Just before her berserk state ends, she stood up and reached her hand towards the Gorgon. She could feel that there was one more step that she could do with her new element. Gritting her teeth, she dragged her hand back slowly as if trying to rip something out from the Gorgon. Spasming from the pain, the Gorgon tried to stop Shiro, but a wall was summoned between them once more. Tears started to fall from the Gorgon's eyes as she knew that whatever was going to happen was much worse than death. But before she could cry out, something seemed to snap within her core being. Within Shiro's hands was a floating orb of densely packed numbers and letters that were unrecognizable. Rows upon rows of these letters swirled in all directions as Shiro was suddenly bombarded by countless notifications from her system. Within this horde of notifications, a single one stood out to her. Gorgon Entity Code extracted. Unable to make sense of this, Shiro shook her head and wanted to get away from the location for now. Unfortunately for her, just as she took a few steps from the area, a wave of pain assaulted her mind, knocking her out and forcing her body to crash against the ground. Affected by the backlash of numerous berserk skills, Shiro had no choice but to allow her body to try to salvage the situation as she drifted out of consciousness. ####. Watching from her own realm, Estrella could only stand in silence as her mind was in a state of shock. Remembering how it felt when the previous queen died and watching her race get enslaved, Estrella never wanted to rely on a figurehead ever again. However, seeing Shiro's performance, her mind could only turn towards the thought of hope once more. Perhaps she could succeed where the last queen had failed. Perhaps she could take the spirit race to new heights. Perhaps, for the first time in countless years, she could finally be spared of having her hopes crushed in front of her. Is it okay to trust this this empress? Despite how many have come before her, is it okay for me to trust in one more queen? Estrella thought to herself as she closed her eyes for a brief moment. Fighting back her tears, she waved her hand and opened a portal. Now that she had found someone she could put her final hopes into, she was going to make sure that Shiro survived no matter what. Once her survival is guaranteed, Estrella didn't mind offering up her own life in order to repent for her actions. Please survive. Estrella prayed earnestly while teleporting everyone next to Shiro. Arriving next to her, Nantion quickly crouched down beside her and scanned her body to check for injuries. However, the moment he scanned her body, his face paled considerably as he could see her body continuously breaking down. While it did try to heal itself, the speed of breakdown was much faster than repair. Seeing this, Nantion did not hesitate to reach into his inventory and pull out one of the best healing medication he had in hopes of saving her life. Gently opening her mouth, he placed the bottle next to her lips and watched as the medicine was drank by her. Thankfully, the medicine seemed to help relieve the breakdown a little, but it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Keiko also had a serious expression on her face since she could tell what was happening to Shiro's body right now. We should probably take her back to my branch sect so that we can get her treated for her injuries, Nantian suggested while looking at the two behind him. He was still on guard about the spirit, so he kept his eye on her. After all, she was the one that got them in this mess. How about we continue our way towards Mount Everest, and you can get your subordinates to meet up in one of the cities to treat Shiro. That way, when she wakes up, we won't have to waste time traveling the distance that we've already traveled. Keiko suggested as Nantian thought about it for a moment and nodded his head. All right, I'll send an emergency to the branch guild, and I'll have them meet us in a Chisfer, which is not too far from Mount Everest. Nantian nodded as he gently carried Shiro up into a princess carry. He knew that she was suffering from immense pain despite being unconscious, so he tried to hold her as gently as possible while using his mana to make sure that her body didn't sway, as even the slightest movement would be unbearable in her current state. Thinking about it for a moment, Nantian decided to use his mana so that they can get to a Chisfer as quickly as possible. Shiro's life was on the line after all. While the three quickly traveled to the city of Chisfer with a spirit following behind them, another fight had just been settled between a human and a dragon. Looking down at the dragon's corpse, that had most of his scales ripped out, the figure furrowed his brows when he saw the rewards for such a feat. TCH, I'm still not tier 6 yet. How many tier 5s do I need to kill? He muttered with a frown. Shaking his head, he collected the dragon's corpse before flying higher into the sky. With the dragon dead, that means only the Gorgon and the third monster are level 500 around this area. Hopefully, killing them will let me reach tier 6. If not, I'll need to start pushing the prisoners to tier 5 quickly so that I can kill them for some EXP, he thought to himself. Annoying. It was easier to get to tier 6 last time because I weakened Nitri, but it was still a pain. But to think she's still alive and kicking after I killed her. Where the hell could she even be in this world? He narrowed his eyes murderously before disappearing from his spot. ####. After clearing the dungeon, the party quickly took Ian and Lysandra back to the hotel and tried to get someone that was more knowledgeable on this matter to help them. Unfortunately, they couldn't find anyone like that, so all they could do is wait around. Thankfully, their complexion seemed to have recovered slightly with Lysandra's level suddenly shooting up. Understanding that Shiro must have defeated the threat, the party sighed in relief. However, the two weren't fully recovered yet, so it meant that Shiro was still suffering. Chinyu, are you able to send a message to your branch leader and ask him what the F***CK is going on? Both Nantian and Keiko are some of the most powerful people in the world, with Kiyomi not too far behind. How the F***CK did Shiro almost die with that kind of escort? Lyrica asked with a frown. I can try to send a message to him. However, I just received word that there's an emergency mission for some of the best healers to make their way to a Chisfer so that they could save someone. I'm guessing that's Shiro. While I don't know what happened, maybe they were split up by a situation that was out of their control. I doubt the branch leader and Keiko would leave Shiro alone in times of danger. Chinyu replied as Lyrica nodded her head. Sending a message to his branch leader, Chinyu waited for a while but got no response. Guessing that they must be in a hurry right now, he sent out his own message to someone that was within the country of Rilsa that might be able to help them out for now. Much like how he was responsible for everything that happened in Varisha, the person he was going to message now was responsible for a different city within Rilsa, and her expertise lies in medicine and contracts that had to do with life. Don't message me, my hands are full. Call me instead. Clicking his tongue, he dialed her number before excusing himself from the party for a moment. Sup Qinlan speaking. A feminine voice rang out as it was much louder than expected. Qinlan, are you able to make your way to Epona for me? I got 2 people here that are bound by contracts, and I was wondering if there was any way we could help out the person on the other side of the contract. From what I know, their life is in danger, hence why the 2 we have with us are also in a similar situation. Chinyu asked seriously. Yes, but like I said, my hands are full right now. I'm doing surgery. Plus, I was actually planning to make my way to a Chisfer since the branch leader sent out the emergency right now. Qinlan replied. I know. The two I have with me are in a contract with the person that the branch master had reported in the emergency. That's why we have 3 dying people right now. I doubt it'll take you long to just check up on the 2 before making your way to a Chisfer. Who knows? Maybe you can get twice the merit. Chinyu persuaded. I'm coming over right now. Qinlan replied instantly. Wait a minute. I thought you were in a surgery? Chinyu furrowed his brows. I wasn't. I quit the game. I was about to break a record, okay? You owe me one. Qinlan complained as Chinyu felt a vein burst. Life was actually weighed against a game that she was playing. If I didn't need her help, I would have King punched her already. Chinyu thought to himself. All right, give me a call when you're in Epona, and I'll take you to the 2 patients that need help. Gotcha. See you later. Qinlan chuckled and ended the call. Massaging his eyes, he put his phone away and walked back to the group. I've managed to get someone from the branch that's experienced with contracts to come here. Hopefully she should be here by tomorrow since she's responsible for this country, Chinyu said while sitting down on the chair. She's a little weird, but I can say that she's definitely talented with contracts, and so far, she's probably our best chance at figuring out what's happening. The branch master is probably busy taking Shiro to a Chisfer right now, so he hadn't replied to my messages. He continued as the party nodded. All right. In that case, then I'll try to stabilize both Ian and Lysandra for now. Even though the fight is over for Shiro, their body is still being damaged over time. Sylvia nodded her head. We're counting on you. Lyrica sighed. No worries, it's my job after all. Sylvia smiled and started to stabilize the girls. While this was happening, Chinyu did not expect to get a message from Qinlan so quickly. I'm here. Where the hell are you? I got 2 patients to treat, and you're wasting my time. Why the hell weren't you this King excited a moment ago? He retorted in his mind before standing up. The person I just talked about has just arrived. I'll be honest though, I did not expect her to be this eager. Chinyu replied as the party quickly urged him to go bring her to them. Nodding his head, he dashed towards the teleport shrine.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.